Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the first question. Mitch, what do we have?
First up is Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. Have you ever run cameras in RAW or log as part of a live production workflow? Log into a switcher and ISO records, then LUT'd them on the final program output into encoder.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I've done something similar to that. There's really no reason not to record something in RAW, at least somewhere in your flow, because it just gives you so much more latitude.
And I think that he's talking about live as well, like a live activation.
Yeah,
with log.
I'm just saying. And what we generally do is that we do a safety recording of anything that we're shooting for whatever reason.
But have you done log, like a log pipeline, though, that's streaming live? So it's going log from the cameras through the switchers, everything else, and then outputting live to an encoder with the LUT.
Yes.
Live? Like not record. There's no records here. Like a live output from the camera. That's what I'm
describing the flow. But yeah. And there'll be a LUT on the monitor so that the client doesn't get upset if it's raw before it gets there. And it's just a good idea to have a copy of it recorded that way.
Yeah, so I think that what Bo's asking about is doing a live pipeline through a switcher, like the live show going to YouTube or going to whatever you want. Not what people are looking at in the studio, but what people are watching online live from that area. And we've definitely done that. The advantage of doing it log this way is that a lot of the equipment that you have may not be able to handle the metadata. So the problem you get into is that now, if you're doing HLG, you don't have any metadata, or not really any metadata. So you can, but HLG, in my opinion, is still kind of HDR light. And so if you're doing HLG, you can get away with running an HLG through a truck or through other things like that. But log gives you, I think, more data to work with than HLG as far as a throughput. And there's a lot of arguments about whether that's true or not. But I believe it does. And even then, some equipment isn't even going to be able to pass any of those things other than just passing log through. So what we do is we run our cameras in log. We run them through, and the real problem when you get into log is that, because then you can just treat it as if it was any other signal. It's a 10-bit signal. It's going through the pipeline. It doesn't have to have any metadata. You don't have to know what it is, and then you're going to convert it at the very end to go out. The challenge you really get into with log is graphics. If your graphics have any kind of semi-transparencies, comping becomes a problem. And so dealing with graphics is probably the biggest problem that we've had in the past with that. And so sometimes that's, getting that to all sync up correctly has been the biggest challenge that we've had doing that. But I've done a lot of shows when we're not using graphics and again, not using overlay graphics. We can definitely get them in, make it work if we're doing an open slate, closed slates, everything else. It's the compositing of semi-transparent graphics in a log space that is more complex. And so anyway, at least that's been our challenge. Otherwise, it's worked great, because now you do need to make sure the one challenge that you have is that if you're doing log, you're typically pulling it from all the same cameras with all the same color science. That becomes a real problem. You can't, the advantage of converting it to another color space like HDR10 is going to be the advantage of that is that you're getting everybody into the same color space. You're correcting them all into the same color space, and then you're expecting them all to look, what you're dealing with log is that you don't have that final correction because you're taking the straight thing out of the camera. And so you could end up with some, changes in, it gets a little complicated to, get the cameras corrected. It's not that you can't change the cameras in a log space, but it's a little bit more complicated to get them to match up. You have to look at them on the other end of that LUT to get them all tied together. But we have used it primarily to deal with systems that can't handle an HDR signal. And again, we have all this equipment, and every one of them has to be able to know what to do. If you're going to put it into HDR, you're going to have problems. We also used it with ATEM switchers before they put the little button in, because if you did HDR, you had to be able to define 2020 versus Rec 709, and so you had to, otherwise it would get confused. And so being able to just say, "Don't worry about it," was useful. So anyway, so those are some of the things you want to look at there. Another little trick there is that if you run those types of things, whether it's HLG or log, through the entire system, and then what we've done is if we want to output to HDR10, we're defining the max CLL, max fill, and the trims in the encoder on the way out. So in the elemental encoders, we can just tell it this is the metadata, and so you basically ignore it all the way through the system, and you have to figure out what it is. So what you do is you record it, you figure out what those things are in something like Resolve, and then you take those trims and put them back into the encoder. Now go ahead, Chris.
I guess my question is, why would we want to do this if it's going to cost? First of all, it seems to me like doing the LUT on the final output seems potentially like disastrous. Like, why wouldn't I? If I wanted to record
HDR, if you're streaming HDR to a show, that's why you do it. I don't know any other reason to do it.
So you can't run HDR through the rest of the production pipeline.
Without that metadata, you'll lose the metadata. It's HLG. You could possibly do HLG, but if the system doesn't see those things, but HLG and log are your two options of my knowledge, and I've done a little bit of HDR. That you need those, one or the other, to go through the system before. The other issue is that so HDR10 and Vision and HDR10 Plus all require metadata. HDR10 requires it over the entire file. Vision requires it at every frame, and so does HDR10 Plus. And so that the question is not, so you have a bunch of components, can they all reliably carry metadata through them that's attached to the SDI signal? And the log takes that off your shoulders, and so does HLG to some degree.
I will withhold my confusion. Clearly, I'm out of my realm.
Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. With Zoom announcing a Vision Pro app, do you think it will usher in a change in how professionals work, or is it just a PR stunt?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, I don't think it's going to change in how people work. That's kind of crazy. But it has a lot of, it's an uphill climb for that because, it's going to have to deliver. If you're wearing the Vision Pro and let's say you're a host of a Zoom webinar or a meeting, it's going to be generating your avatar, your animated avatar to everybody else that's in the meeting. And the question is, what does it put behind you? Because it can't really see behind you in real time.
It's just it's kind of a gray background.
Oh, okay.
Like what we were doing before. It's going right back to where I think that they just
generates an appropriate background. My question is it going to generate spatial sound for all the people that you place around your room so that they sound like they're around you? You got put somebody in the back of the bus or, behind you and in front of you. And you can position, according to their release, you can position the participants around the room however you want them. And it sizes them appropriately for their actual size in that distance. So it sounds interesting. And you can tell us all about it when you come in on Friday, Alex.
I won't be Friday, but it might be Saturday. I don't think I would do it on Sunday because Sunday is more of our introspection day, but I may. If it's successful, I may try to come in on Saturday. I think that Felipe is also getting one, so we may try to come in on Saturday with the headsets. Chris is appalled.
Stay tuned. Yes.
I don't know. Did you see that Marquez posted his unboxing video this morning?
No, he hasn't. I haven't seen it. I saw a little bit of Justine's unboxing.
I figured she had one also.
She liked it.
Marquez did, but
so I think that the report, as I remember correctly, the report is mostly like it's amazing and it's heavy, and so like those are the things. It's like everything about it is amazing and it's heavy.
And it's heavy. Yeah, it's too heavy. It's 4 times heavier than it probably should be.
It's too heavy. It's too far. So it's a nice box.
We'll never make it to the moon. It's too far and there's no air.
It's too far. It's too far.
Alex, when is yours coming in?
Friday. I don't know exactly when, but Friday it should arrive. And so anyway, so it'll be interesting to see.
So Alex, I was wondering, would you like to, go out and hang out on Monday or Saturday, maybe have lunch, go for a long walk, do anything but be near your computer desk?
That's what my day looks like every day. So there's target markets and then I am the center of the target market for this headset. The funny thing is that my exercise is mostly that I go behind where I'm standing right now with a Meta Quest and I box, and it's actually I can't, like, my heart rate is very high when I'm done. Like it's a lot of movement. And so anyway, most of my existence lives in this office. I know that people would love to think that I go out, but I don't go out.
Is it just me, or does the padded nature of this box make it look like a NASA spacesuit?
I think that might be the idea.
You think so? I think that's the design initiative.
I don't know. One thing about Apple is, that they thought about everything. There's a reason for everything that there's nothing that they did kind of by accident, especially with this product.
It's like pillowy.
Yeah, it looks very pretty. So anyway,
there's a reason for everything except for creating this product.
yeah. I think it's going to be. I think that this is going to be a pretty big deal. So I know people don't think so, but I think that. I think that when you start seeing some of the stuff that's probably going to come out, it's going to be pretty interesting.
Counting on my stock to go up because of it.
Hopefully we won't see it on the shelf behind you.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that it's going to be pretty useful. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. I find myself with an itchy recording finger. Where can I find stories to tell with my camera?
One of the things that's interesting is, like, think about something that you love to do other than you record with your camera, and then figure out how to shoot it. So, like, I think that's really that's the step that I would take. I mean, one of the things that we shot, that we turned a hobby into something that turned out to be something that was useful. Is we had lots of these local restaurants and local places we'd like to go. We actually created a show called Local Wisdom a while ago. And it was really just about 2-minute pieces about local places we'd like to go. We put a couple of videos up, and then I ended up selling it as a product. And so we did it for an online internet company for a while, and it was super fun. You go in, say, hey, I'm doing videos for YouTube. Nowadays you can say that. We couldn't say it back then because no one barely knew what YouTube was. But you can go in and say, we're doing this thing for YouTube, and we're doing a little video. We'd like to shoot a little behind the scenes, and you go in and you shoot a bunch of pickup shots. You might do an interview. Like, I didn't even like interviewing people, so I just did the pickup shots and then talked over it. This is what we had a host talk over it, and it was a lot of fun. But it gave me, I was the one that shot most of those pieces. It gave me the opportunity to do a lot of pickup shots, and really play with the camera and play with angles and so on and so forth. And so, think about things like that, covering things that you really enjoy, or showing how to do something. How-tos are great. To kind of play with there. But those are, especially when you if you're not haven't done storytelling in the past, shooting things that you're passionate about is probably the first step. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith from Chautauqua, New York. I've got 2 graphics cards installed on my machine, and vMix has only seen my Radeon and not the NVIDIA card. I have NVIDIA controllers set to be used with vMix, but the program does not see it. Each of my monitors are plugged into the NVIDIA card.
I would take the Radeon card out and see if it sees the NVIDIA card once the Radeon card is not there, and then let us know. So the first step for anything is to reduce the number of variables and then put the variables back in. So do that first. It's hard for us to say what's happening there until you remove one of them and see if the NVIDIA card now shows up. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Is there a chance that AMD and NVIDIA have a mutually exclusive agreement that if we see one of your cards in our thing, we're just going to not work?
Very unlikely.
Certainly had that with Apple, with my NVIDIA going bad with one upgrade and then metal.
That really, NVIDIA, that was a whole different issue between Apple and NVIDIA. So go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, check your device manager and make sure it's seeing both cards. And if it isn't, you might need to go into the BIOS and make sure it's booting. And you can set which video card is used as your primary card or your first card to boot. Maybe that's what the problem is. It's whichever card is set to primary is the only thing the software may see. So that could be the problem.
And again, I would highly recommend first taking one out and seeing if you can see it at all. Is it seeing the NVIDIA card at all? Don't deal with more variables than you have to when you're trying to troubleshoot. Next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman from Orlando, Florida right now. Harshid, could you describe how the plastic overlays we saw at the ATIA conference for tablets, how it could help with cutting a show on Universe, mimolive, or others?
Go ahead, Harshid.
Yeah, so these plastic overlays were think of your iPad. Your iPad is a touchscreen, and to put something over it, and let's say you have 6 buttons that says camera 1, 2 through 6. You're able to put this overlay in your own design, and someone that might be in a production can tactily feel what's going on without having to look down or see if something is missing, on your iPad, if something went wrong. And it keeps things stable. So these tactile overlays helped people with keyboard need, that especially with kids, they might be learning a keyboard, but we kind of looked at it as how is Office Hours Global going to be beneficial, or any other production company. So these tactile overlays can be customized, and they're pretty thin. They don't really weigh much, to have even one component that had a magnetic add-on to it. So if you're in that kind of format, you could add something on top of something else. So these overlays were quite interesting, and it was from the Assistive Technology Industry Association, held in Orlando, Florida.
Next question.
Next one in from Hasmut Kajar in Cape Town, South Africa. How do I send program view to a talent monitor? ATEM Extreme ISO HDMI. Both video outs are occupied in production setup. Have a spare ATEM Extreme and an ATEM Mini Pro.
Courtney?
Well, if you've got your program output going out one of those HDMI outputs on your Extreme, put a splitter in and split one end of it out if that's always remaining to be the program out on one of your HDMI outputs. If the program out is only going out the USB AVC output, then you could put a secondary monitor using a pluggable, or if your computer has a second monitor available to it, take that second monitor output of your computer that's getting it, and then launch an application that will take that AVC and make it full screen and send that to your out for your person on camera, or who do you want to send? Talent monitor. So send that out to the talent monitor. That's a way to do it, either with a splitter on one of your HDMI outputs if one of them has program out permanently assigned to it, or the other way.
I think that the HDMI version of the Extreme is a great personal product to have on your desk to give you a lot of inputs and a lot of I/O. I would, at this point, I own both the Extreme HDMI and the SDI. I would do production with the SDI version, and convert things to it because it has 4 outs. In addition to a lot of other things, it has 4 outs, and it gives you the freedom to do that. We fill those up immediately too, but I would recommend really thinking about that as part of the pipeline. It's much easier to route and put into a little router, or to do other things like that. And so I'd really consider it, if you're doing production, to move to the SDI version. I love my HDMI version, but I'm on the border of getting a small router, like a 20 by 20, and then having this and converting everything here to SDI, because the HDMI is pretty limiting. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida. On-camera interview audio recording. Would you choose a wired lav, a shotgun mic, or other mic, and why?
Mitchell?
My preferred setup in that particular instance is a wired lav. You can do a wireless lav, but you're going to eliminate one problem. If you have the opportunity to wire it, and a shotgun, and split the audio so that you're sending it to each channel. It's just, personally, I like the sound of a shotgun. I like a little bit of the room tone in there with the voice. A lav tends to be very proximity oriented, so that's my preferred setup. I'd use both.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's a typical situation, like Mitch said, is usually almost all recorders have 2 channels these days, and most sound mixers put the lav on one channel and this boom on another, and one backs up the other. So if your lav gets occluded by someone going, "Oh, I was so upset," and clutching their chest, that kills the lav, and then you could use the boom for that. The boom, generally, I like, sounds a little bit better unless you're in a very live environment. Where it's going to pick up too much of the room noise. So you can mix them together, but only carefully, depending upon the echo situation in the room.
Yeah, I would say that I was trying to find a picture here so I can show kind of our setup, the setup that we've used in the past. This is kind of, let's see here if I can go to this. This is another good example of this. There you go. So this is kind of the way we set it up here. You see the shotgun here. Oftentimes there's another shotgun down below. So we have sometimes we have, it depends on sometimes the audio engineer, but usually this is the beginning of this. But we would typically have, I think you're actually missing that there are two mics sitting right next to each other right there. So there's actually two stacked here, and then there's one down here that goes up, and then the person kind of sits down. I work with a lot of VIPs that don't like to be touched. And so as a result, we've kind of gotten into the habit of not using lavs because they don't want to be fiddled with. And so we tend to have built around shotgun mics so that it's low impact on the person coming in. I also don't like the way lavs sound. I don't like them at all. And so I feel like, if you get a cardioid, it has a lot of its own problems. If you get an Omni, it picks up everything. And so I strongly prefer, I used to use lavs, and I used to use them as backups, and I'd have the shotguns as backups, or I'd use a lot of things. At this point, if I'm interviewing someone in a space that I control, I will almost always just use a shotgun. And that, again, we started doing this because we were dealing with VIPs that didn't want anyone, like we would get instructions like don't put anything on them, so don't touch them, And so as a result, we got used to using the shotguns. When we went back to the lavs, we decided we didn't like them. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I seem to have more problems with a lav mic for the reasons that Courtney explained. It could be a plosive or somebody hitting themselves where the mic is. I never have that problem with the shotgun. Yeah. And my other question to you, Alex, is what kind of shotguns do you prefer?
The 416s. I mean, typically we have some Sheps that we use as well, or that it depends on the two that we see the most, because I don't own a lot of them. So I have just little NT2s, NTG2s from Rode or whatever. They're pretty noisy. So the self noise on them, I wouldn't, they're not great. But if I'm the audio, the A1s that we hire to do this typically are bringing either Sheps or 416s. Those are the two that we see the most in that area. And those are all, we record everything into sound devices. I don't think I've used anything other than sound devices for probably 15 years. So we don't really think about the cameras or the splitting or anything else. It's usually a Scorpio 788, 744, or one of the Mix Pre series. Next question.
Next question is Vic Hernandez from Springfield, Missouri, asking, what are some of the practices for supporting talent that is uncomfortable on stage?
Courtney?
Well, one thing you can do is kind of keep your technical shouting down to don't scare them by going, all right, ready, stand by. That creates a lot of anxiety in your talent. Even sometimes doing a slate can make people anxious if you're sticking a slate in front of them. So try and keep the things that you need to do to make your production go, agree ahead of time that your staff, maintain silence on set. And this is usually performed by having comms with in-ear monitors so that people can respond silently back and forth and get things worked out for the production without disturbing the talent on the set is one thing. And then making the talent comfortable, making sure they have water or coffee or something, anything that they need handy by so that they can take a drink when they want to, have it on a little table just out of the shot, perhaps, and make them more comfortable in the setting, of course. That, can ease fears somewhat. And I've had directors that don't even like to tell the talent when they're rolling, which I kind of disagree with. They have code words for, roll camera, roll sound, that they agree on ahead of time so that the crew knows that when the director says, isn't it a great day outside, boom, everybody rolls. So that keeps the technique of capturing stuff hidden from the talent. And then they just start discussing things as if they're just having a conversation, and the talent may not even realize that the camera's rolling. I think that's cruel and unusual, though.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
One point of contact usually makes it better. If you have people shouting orders to them from different places on the crew, that can be very disorienting. The other thing I like to do with like somebody that, not a CEO that does this all the time, but somebody that's a first-timer and they got doe eyes, is I'll say, look, why don't we just practice reading this one time, or just let us set some levels. And like Courtney says, we'll be rolling on that. And once that happens, I tell them, look, we've got it in the can. We just recorded what you just did. everything else is downhill from here, and that usually takes a little bit of the edge off the expectations of performing. And the other thing that I'll say, if it makes any sense, is all these people here are here for you to make you look better and sound better. We will not let this go out. We'll make you look and sound like a genius.
Never let someone practice without recording, because there have been so many times when we've had great cuts that they did perfectly the very first time they did it. I think it was Landslide. I think that was the one that we were walking through the record plant, and they were talking about Fleetwood Mac, and they said that Stevie Nicks wrote that in the middle of the night and walked in and said I had to record it, and recorded it once. Like literally, that was the very first time. Like what you hear on the song was the first time she sang it. Like, you know, and then they put everything else behind it the next day or whatever, or over the next week. But it was, you know, and I think that sometimes capturing that is something you want to make sure you do. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, one of the things that we've tried to get people to do, just because so often we need a thumbnail for something later, is we'll treat a portion of the record almost like a photo session. Hey, can I get you to smile? You know, and even if, you know, it's mostly an off-camera thing, a lot of times they want, you know, just a face shot, a headshot for a thumbnail. Right. So we'll just take a portion of it, either the very beginning, very end, and just say, hey, can we get a few shots of you? And just start talking like you're a photographer and just get a few smiles. It makes it so much easier than trying to find that one frame.
Yeah. And I don't know whether when you're saying on stage, like, is this part of an interview or they actually have to present on stage? Those are very different things that are there. You know, if we're trying to do interviews, the other thing that we do is we really talk to our interviewer, and there's a cadence that we ask them to follow, which is really follow the rule of law, is what we say, is that you want to do it the same way you do it in court, which is first direct and then cross. And what we mean by that is ask them open-ended questions without any leading data first. You know, what did you do? Do you use Salesforce? You know, how do you use it? And what do you do then? And how do you do that? Like very short questions that give them a lot of space to run around. You obviously have things you want them to say, and at some point talk about this, or you'll kind of start tightening up. And then you start getting into some more directives of, hey, we need you to really talk about this part here, or talk to this. But don't start with that, and don't interrupt them with that. Get all the open-ended stuff out first, because they're going to be in the best space as soon as you start really directing them hard. And you may need to do that to get the soundbite that you're looking for. You're going to ruin their experience and their performance. And so you want to make sure that you get the other stuff out first, and get as much of the good stuff out, and then you're going to get your sound clip. But don't go. A lot of people make the mistake of trying to get what they needed first and then let them just talk. But they're gone by then. You know, like you can see that they're kind of dead in the eyes, waiting to leave, you know, pretty quickly after that. And so you just have to understand what the cadence is there. I will say that people being comfortable on stage, you know, we talk about this a lot. From the week before, you're doing things to make them comfortable on stage, not when they just walk up on stage. How you're interacting with them, how you're setting them up, what you're finding out about them. Hey, what do you like to have for, you know, when you get to the green room, what kind of tea do you like? What do you like your coffee with, you know, this? Do you want it? What kind of, do you like your room to be cool or warm? Do you like to have all the, you know, and you're asking them all these questions. Then you're making sure that they know how to get there. You make sure, for a lot of our clients, we send someone to go pick them up. But if they don't, when they get there, we make sure that there's the process, that the way the makeup's done. We think about who the makeup artist is, not only in skill, but their how they interact with the clients. We think about that space. Is that space safe for them? Do they feel like people are watching them get makeup put on? Do they, because especially men get really uncomfortable if, having someone, they don't want anyone to take a picture of them having makeup put on. And so these are all things that we think about in that area, but clarity of where you're going to go and what you're going to do, and being very, like, I had a world leader, and I had to tell him he's walking in. I'm going to tell him how he's going to go around and what he's going to do. He's never going to get to practice. He's only going to get to do this once. And I spent an hour practicing 45 seconds to make sure that the 45 seconds I had with him, I could just say what I needed to say, and it would be totally clear, and he would totally understand it, because that's going to affect his comfort. That's going to affect his performance and how he's going to, appear on that. And so those are the things that you have to kind of take into account, that everything you're doing with that partner, the rows in the backstage, the arrows and the little things that are put out there to see where to walk, to be there, that it affects the comfort of the talent, so that they know where they need to go and what they need to do. And a lot of people don't think about those things. And as a result, it definitely affects their comfort. And then the final thing is practice. Getting used to going up on stage and practicing it. For a lot of large events, you think that people just walked up on stage. They practice those sometimes for up to 6 to 8 weeks before they got up on stage on a test stage. So don't think that like the folks that if you're doing a smaller event and people are just doing it, don't expect them to look like they do on an Apple event or a Salesforce event or a Google event. There's a lot of rehearsal that happens there, and a lot of coaching that happens, and a lot of other things that happen before they get there. And you can always tell the people who didn't rehearse very much, because they come on stage as a guest and they look like all over the place because they haven't done it 100 times. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, and don't underestimate the talent. Sometimes they can turn the tables and surprise the heck out of you. We had an interview recently we did with our state senator, Chris Coons. He's very well spoken. First thing he did when he got in a position is he said, "Can you cut that eye light out? I got a headache and it's really bothering me." I'm like, how did he know that's an eye light?
Yeah, lighting is also something a lot of people, it's a good point. Lighting is also something a lot of people are sensitive to, a lot of guests. So a lot of times we try to think about, how do we open up that aperture? How do we get big sources that are not like small sources? You have to really turn them on, put a lot of light through them to get the person lit. A big 4-foot source that's really low will light them better oftentimes, but it also is feels like less of a direct light on them as well. So those are other things to kind of consider. Next question.
From Ken Jordan in Surrey, Great Britain, I'm using an OBSBOT UVC to HDMI adapter, 2nd gen, for an OBSBOT Tiny 4K PTZ and my Brio 4K webcams with ATEM Mini Switcher. Any similar or better 4K UVC to HDMI converters recommended? And there's a link.
I go, Courtney.
I don't know about better, but there are some people that use Raspberry Pis and then just kind of cobble together their own UVC to HDMI output, since the Pi has, a USB input that you can plug a webcam into, and you can have a piece of software like VLC put that webcam input full screen. Then you can take the output of the Pi, which is HDMI, and feed it out. But I would worry about latency in that respect. It may create too much latency. So I don't know of many standalones other than that OBSBOT. I think there's an RGB Link TAO or something, makes something that does that. So you might look into that.
Next question.
Lalik Lopez Waterman in Orlando, Florida. How does the iOS camera app pick up voices in a noise floor like in a conference? Is it similar to the photos where it's all post-processing?
Harshid?
So at the Asia conference, I did talk to somebody from Apple, part of the accessibility experience team. I want to say some of it has to do with configuration, but the other thing I wanted to allude to is it almost felt like it was beamforming microphones. At the Asia conference in the exhibition hall, Tlaloc took videos of me. You could find them in the Discord accessibility general area. But the quality was impressive because the person was standing to the right of me, Tlaloc was to the left of me, but it did a great job to pick out the voices in sequence to the person. So I don't know if there is some processing going on there or not, but it was really impressive with the iPhone 15.
Yeah, there's with a lot of these types of things, there's mics on both sides of the camera, so it knows which side. If it's kind of like it's not exactly, but kind of like a Dugan Auto Mix, where it goes, I'm hearing most of the voice on this side, or I'm hearing most of the voice on that side. And number one is it can separate out the voice directly. So a lot of the filters are built around that wavelength, and really identifying those types of things. The machine learning understands what is voice versus what is not. If things are close to a voice, you'll notice that they show up a lot in the record. But if they're far away from a voice from a tenor perspective, like what it can identify, it's it's pretty good at getting rid of them. But it's also using both of those mics to make a decision about what is being forward and what is not and what it should grab onto. But you will notice there's a lot of things that there's some places where these will work really, really well. And there's other places where there's little dings and other things that are in the same place that a voice sits, and then it doesn't do well at all. So it's something that you'll shoot something and think, oh, I should use this all the time. And then you shoot the next thing and you're like, I should never do this again. So it all depends. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, during the pandemic, it was said that the independent venue gives artists their start. In a world where artists can release music to the world on their own, along with building live audiences online, is that still the case?
Courtney?
Well, yeah, it transitioned from the music industry really transitioned before the pandemic to a situation where artists could record at home. And sorry, wrong. And they can release at home. Once the internet came about, people discovered that, hey, what do we need a record label for? Well, you need a record label obvious for promotion and to be discovered. It used to be you discover new music on the radio. Well, as radio became less and less a method of discovery of music or presenting new music as people turned to streaming services, the only way to really get noticed is to be put at the top of the stream or exposed on the streaming service. And to do that, you need some type of promotion or management to, come up with the bucks to gather together an audience or promote you in some other way than just discovery. And so now with the pandemic, people were out, had a lot of free time to surf the internet and find new stuff. So maybe that increased your exposure. But the problem is, getting to be exposed to the level where you're discovered is the question. So these days, finding a influencer, somebody who already has a built-in huge subscription base, to become their best friend and to surface your music somehow, get an interview or something on their podcast to expose you, and then you can take your privately created album and surface it and make it available on your own website.
The hard part for artists, I think, is the idea of having to do everything in public. A lot of people who have become more popular on YouTube, man, it took hundreds and hundreds of videos of them on TikTok or YouTube to do those things to build up that following. And so I think a lot of artists aren't ready to do that. They do that sometimes playing concerts at gigs and so on and so forth. So I think that's the hard part for artists. Even artists that you think got big on TikTok oftentimes had a record company behind them, and TikTok was the avenue that they chose, and there was a lot of careful work to kind of build that up. And so the hard part is that artists oftentimes want to be artists, and they don't want to do all the things that are required to build up a huge following, which is something that is pretty hard to do by yourself. And so a record company still adds that value to what they're actually doing. The cost, of course, is ownership of their work and a lot of other things that are kind of part of that process, as Glen talked about yesterday. So I think that those are the things that you have to kind of take into account. Next question.
QR code question coming in from Zach Jeffers in the Great Pacific Northwest. I know most of the crew uses Dante, but head-to-head, what's the real differences or considerations between building a new setup with Dante or AVB in mind? Not worried about expanding to venues, just our crew's rigs.
I guess I would say that for me, when I'm dealing with the reason we use Dante is because we use it everywhere. Like, it's just easier to know one of these things and so whether it's expanding to a venue, I don't use it in a venue. I use it in my house. Like I use it in this little desk here, because it's just a really easy way to pass a lot of information. It's an industry standard. I know a lot of people would love to have it be something else because they don't want to pay for it. But the problem is they got too far ahead, and now it's really like, oh, it's really nice to have all of these things just do the thing that they need to do. And so I think that that's the real challenge is that there are so many devices that make this work that it's really hard to get people to move anywhere else, and you have a lot of products that can already tie into it. And in general, it just works. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, Dante's newer, maybe better. AVB is a little bit older. It's been around a long while. So I would guess at some point, personally, I've got a lot of older gear that's got AVB, but not so much new stuff.
Next question.
Next one in from Max Schiffman in Carlsbad, California, seeking suggestions to improve the quality of our company's Zoom's fireside chats with our CEO and other leaders. Need to have live interaction with our members for the question and answer segment. Thinking Zoom production studio, then promote to panelist.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know. It depends on who's coming into this fireside chat. Are the employees of the company? I'd be careful about giving them a platform without careful screening. I think it'd be fine to have them come in via chat, which could be moderated so that you could surface the questions that were legitimate and pertinent to the fireside chat, and have someone handling, guest relations and only surface those that have been totally cleared. Because a lot of sometimes disgruntled employees show up to shareholder meetings and try and air their dirty laundry in front of the public, and that is not a good thing to have on a corporate video or anything that's public facing. So only with a lot of moderation, I would suggest against doing a live Q&A segment where the people actually come in on video and are given a live microphone to add questions to the mix, unless you're really sure who they are and have set them up ahead of time.
Yeah, I have less of a worry about, I have less of a concern about people saying bad things. It's possible, but most employees won't do that, because you only get to say that once. Like, that like get up on a, I've worked with a lot of companies, get up on a soapbox and say a bunch of things, and no one's going to say anything to you except that you're going to notice that, you're, the next layoff, you're on it, and that's layoffs are how you clean complainers out of a corporation. And so that, like, a lot of good people go as well, but there's a lot of people that get caught up in that, and it's usually they've been identified as more difficult. And so I don't think you don't end up with too many of those things, especially if they're the real problem. I find is that most people just aren't nearly as interesting as they think they are. And so they get up there and they have a bunch of things they want to say. You open up a mic, and they'll say a bunch of things that they think in their head in real time was a good, and I've done it myself, by the way, that you think that is a really smart question, and really what they want to do is they want to say something, but they'll wrap it into a question, and it's a comment. That's what we call it, a comment. Oh, they're commenting, and so that means that they're using the question to make a comment. so anyway, so commenting is that process, and it's really annoying, for everyone watching. And so I find that, this system that we use here was specifically designed to keep people from using a mic. It was actually, Mukana was actually created for in the room, not online. It was created so that I could keep people from actually going up to mics. And most of our clients in the early days were like, "Oh, I'm never going to open mics again." And so because you get a bunch of questions, you get the heart of the question quickly, and you're able to answer it effectively, especially when you allow people to vote on those questions, then you really get what the overall audience wants to hear, not what one person wants to say. And so I think that overall, I would look for some kind of online chat. I mean, if you really wanted to have them, I know that historically you might have done that. I promise that if you do it 3 to 5 times in a row without having people on, you'll never go back. Nobody ever does. No one ever goes back to, "Oh, I really wish I had those people talking on the show." That doesn't happen. It's because it's always horrible, and they have bad mics and bad cameras and all these other things that just don't make it, that really jack the show up. So I will say that you won't want that if I know that you'll have a hard time. C-suites will get caught up in wanting to have it the way it's been, but that's really a historical comment, historical approach. As far as making it better, I think the production studio is a good first start. I think that you'll find that that's a place you can go. Also look at things like vMix, mimolive on the Mac, vMix on the PC, OBS on the PC. Potentially, we're going to be testing Vector to test it in the cloud. But think about ways of taking Zoom ISO or the Zoom SDK, bringing people in. It's so great. Like, we do the Michael Krasny show which is kind of like a fireside chat. And I did the Colleen Henry one that if you go to our page, that's mimolive with Zoom ISO feeding those in. And the next step for me is to do it directly with just mimolive, where I can just bring people into mimolive. You can have a bunch of people there. You can bring them all in and have that discussion. you're gonna have so many more options when it comes to how it looks and feels than you will in Zoom Production Studio. Zoom Production Studio is good. We use it on Sundays, and I think that it's a lot simpler than using what I just said. But you'd be surprised at how easy it actually is to create a show using something like mimolive or vMix or something to make it just look a little nicer than what you'd be able to do in the vanilla product. So think about that. Next question.
Another QR code question, this one from John Jordan in Edison, New Jersey. How are most Instagram or TikTok influencers recording themselves direct to cam? Are most using an iPhone as their camera with an iRig or similar audio interface for a professional microphone? Or do most use an actual camera like a mirrorless DSLR?
From the folks that I've seen, most of what you see on TikTok, those are, and Instagram, a lot of it is the phone. Like it is very phone oriented. I mean, there are definitely people who are shooting with bigger cameras, but the interesting thing is that we find that on TikTok, if we use short depth of field, it actually depresses the number of views. People feel like it's overproduced. It's a commercial. It's a whatever. So you actually have there's a different side of it when we're doing TikTok stuff that we've done in the past that we go to a longer depth of field and make it look more like a phone or even use a phone. And now using the phone is even easier with the iPhone 15 because of its recording quality. And so sometimes they have mics. Sometimes they're using the built-in mics. A lot of times there's little shotgun mics that are next to them. These rings, I have one around here somewhere, but I can't quite grab it. Little ring that you put the camera in the middle of, and then what's interesting is that they shoot for two different platforms. I think I have. I don't think I have it where I can grab it. They use these little suction cups. It's a really funny thing. They have these two sets of suction cups that they glue to the back of their back of their phones. So they'll have two phones, and they rotate them 90 degrees, and then they stick them together. So you'll see these at these influencer events, and they'll hit record on both of them, and then they're recording in 16:9 and 9:16 natively with both of those. And you may think that why don't they just shoot 4K and send it up is because they're sending those up and someone's putting them up really fast, and they don't want to sit there and try to re-render them or not re-render them, but try to pan and scan or anything else. And so you see a lot of things, but a lot of it is phone driven. A lot of it doesn't have a mic, and if it does, it's often little shotgun mics. They don't put not a lot of users. Now there's a new thing where influencers have discovered a lav, and you'll see them holding it. As a production person, it just hurts my heart to watch them do that. But they hold it up like a SM58, but it's like a little lav, and they're talking into it. That's the new fashion here. And all I got to say is, if you're an influencer and you're watching this, stop. Just stop. Anyway, go ahead, Chris.
There's another. I'm trying to look for a prop sitting here, and I don't have. Actually, I might. Right here. The other one I've seen is people doing this. They hold up a.
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole thing. They're holding up the lav.
No, it's the connector.
Oh.
It's just a visual prop. They're talking into some other mic. They're holding up the connector.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, fast fashion.
People hate them.
It's the media version of fast fashion. Next question.
QR code question from Jens Olson in Sandpoint, Idaho. Is there an AI-powered podcast playback system that can dynamically adjust playback speed based on content? For example, Alex sounds very weird at one time after 10-plus years at 2 times, but Glen singing at 2 times is also not ideal.
Go, Chris.
I'm going to put in my annual plea to just stop with this madness of double speeding stuff.
It's so great.
It's not great. It's not healthy, Alex. I promise you, there will be a day when this comes out that this is literally bad for society. It's not good for humanity to try and force that much data into your head that quick.
So I will.
And now I'll let you do your little, I got to do it fast thing, whatever.
I find it easier to concentrate when it's going fast. Like it's just, I think about other things.
Learn to concentrate. Learn.
I don't
calm
have to.
down.
I don't have to.
Calm down.
I don't have to.
Learn.
I can just launch everything at 2x. I do find that some people I have to slow down to 1.7, 1.75 or whatever because they're talking a little too fast. But generally 2x. Yeah, I think that it would be interesting to see it be, I think that'll be hard, but yeah, I was listening to something, I can't remember what it was recently, where I turned it on and I was like, what is wrong with the song? And I was looking at it and I realized that it was still at 2x, and I was watching the song play at 2x, and I was like, okay, that doesn't work. Next question.
Next one in is another QR code question from Scott Pulsifer from Philadelphia. Which one do you recommend to upgrade a native user's feed to us? Easy over good. A teleprompter, Elgato, Glide Gear, PrompterPeople, or another?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I'm very carefully considering the Elgato. They have a new teleprompter, Teratron. It's really a nice design. It's got a single connector to it. It's 10 inches. And that's my preferred choice right now. I'm going to get one as soon as I can.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the problem with the Elgato is it's a USB-C and it doesn't take a NEO video input. What it does, you have to plug it into a computer. So you can't plug it into, let's say, the output of your ATEM because it has a pluggable video driver built into it. So it appears as an extra monitor on your computer. It does the image reverse, which is good in its hardware, I suppose. So I would kind of not recommend that unless you're set up for it to have it coming out of your computer and not coming out of a switch or something else. If the Glide Gear is fairly cheap stuff, it's made in China as everything is, but you have a little more variability in the Glide Gear. Most of the Glide Gear stuff is designed for interfacing to a tablet, like an iPad or a phone in some cases. And a lot of them don't come with their own monitors. PrompterPeople is a step up from there. Be much more expensive. It'll have a dedicated monitor that has a variety of inputs, either HDMI or sometimes SDI or composite video, so that you can feed any type of video input into it, and it will do the reverse image in the monitor itself. So that's another thing to consider. And that's the range of price as well, from cheapest that you've listed there, from Elgato to Glide Gear to PrompterPeople. It goes up in price as you go through those three choices.
And yeah, and I have I wouldn't use the Elgato, but I think for simple things I would probably recommend it. Is then I need to have it, as Courtney said, come out of a video pipe so that I can composite things and do other things for it. So I don't want it to be coming straight out of my computer. So I probably wouldn't use it, but if someone was saying easy and the average person isn't going to do that, then I'd have them go ahead and use the Elgato. Next question.
And the next question coming to us as a QR code question from Gabriela Excesio Mistira from Sault Ste. Marie. The question is, why is there always so much keyboard noises and mouth noises on the show? Isn't there an AI to block this or remove it before the viewers hear it? And it's a lot of typing and gulping sometimes, but I know someone said that shows paying more attention.
Yeah, it's probably me some of the time because I have a mic that's very sensitive, and if I don't mute it all the time, it picks up, and sometimes I forget to mute it. A lot of times I am muting. Almost every time I stop talking, I'm muting. But sometimes I forget, and then you hear me typing because I have a loud keyboard. So you hear me typing, and you might hear me take a sip of tea so that I don't have this little scratchy voice that I'm having right now. Next question.
Pardon me, I didn't do that on purpose. Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. MIT, with Live Nation funding, will be studying the environmental impact of the live music industry. What are your thoughts?
It's coming. You're going to see a lot more of this. This is going to be, it's interesting that Live Nation would fund this because I don't think it's necessarily good for them. But I think that we've heard a lot of people talking about it, and there's a discussion afoot to require all events or to encourage all events to publish their carbon footprint. So calculating all the people that are flying in and all the hotels and all the cabs and all the things and all the shipping and everything else that's required to put on an NAB or a CES or a Sales or Dreamforce or whatever, and publish that. And the second thing they're going to encourage people to do is buy carbon credits to offset it or to do things that are offsetting it. And that's going to take all the fun out of doing big events because there's going to be a big check there that's going to go somewhere to do that. But basically, it started picking up speed before COVID, and then it kind of stopped, obviously, because COVID stopped all those things happening. But now they're starting to warm back up again, and as you see more, changes in the environment or what are changes in our weather, you're going to see this increase. And really, what the organizations have talked about is, if people don't start publishing it, we will start publishing it for them. Like, we'll just guess. and put it up there. And we'll be much more conservative than they will be. So people will either have to start posting reasonable numbers for what that is, or there's Sierra Club and others will start posting for them like, hey, we think this is what it is, and they should talk about how they're going to offset that. You good, Courtney?
Yeah, before we were concerned about the carbon footprint of events like this, there's a huge problem with giant events such as Coachella or Woodstock, where you're gathering together a lot of people for a live music venue that may last multiple days, and it's outdoors. It can cause, if you've ever seen the aftermath of, watch Woodstock, where they show the cleanup after the show is over, and it's just a sea of garbage spread across acres and acres of land that have to be cleaned up, and that land has to be restored to its normal use after the concert, and that takes a lot of work, and it makes a big imprint on the land, not even considering all the cars that are driving in and the people that are flying in and the helicopters that bring people in and out. It's just a bad impact on the land. They use up a lot of garbage, and it's all put in one place.
Next question.
And it's from David Brady in New York, New York. We often need to use an on-air broadcast studio to stream town halls out to Vimeo. We don't own the pipeline and noticed interlaced combing on high-motion gestures. What is the lowest friction point to correct, software or hardware?
Vimeo should be just taking the footage that you're streaming to it, combing on the high-motion gestures. I'd be really curious as to what you're sending. Are you sending if you're sending a progressive into Vimeo, I'm surprised that you would see that effect. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, if they're taking a broadcast out, it may be 1080i, and that is the issue, and it's trying to use both fields. So you might want to convert it to 1080p and choose a field rather than to interpolate and get a progressive feed from a 1080i. So find a 1080i to 1080p converter before you go into Vimeo that will just double one field rather than take both fields and put them into a single progressive package, where you're going to see the little combing on horizontal motion if you don't do that.
Yeah, I don't know if you're doing. Yeah, you absolutely. If you are sending in a 1080i signal, you absolutely have to make sure that you're converting it to program. Don't ever let the encoder do that. You want to definitely convert it back to P before you send it out. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael with a question: how can venues leverage the accidental model to foster community beyond their walls online?
We're doing more and more of that as we start to build productions, or as we do productions where we have more and more people off-site managing the hardware on-site. So that model is something that is becoming, I think that a lot of even big broadcasts are utilizing a lot of those things already. So I think that we're going to keep on seeing that. It's just mostly a matter of how do you build the network so that it's local. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Starlink Plaza, Texas. How do you deal with the recency bias where you tend to weigh recent information more than long-term information in making decisions?
I don't usually have that problem. So anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
In my day, I remember it's more like buzz. More people are associated with internet buzz and what's current topic, so they pay more attention to what's in the news or more popular at the time rather than to consider the historical background or, in making a decision, you don't necessarily consider everything that may be pertinent. You just tend to consider the stuff that is most recent in everyone's, coming across their desk more recently and making a decision.
We'll be talking about Captain Disillusion here in just a second. Tomorrow we're going to have Ryan Summers on. Ryan Summers is a creative director at Spilt and an incredible graphic artist, and he's going to be talking about his path and the industry from his vantage point on Thursday. CJ is going to be here, and he's going to be talking about color basics in Resolve. So that should be a really interesting Thursday. Friday we're going to be talking about infrastructure. It might be a 2-day. I think we're going to end up with with a 2-hour Q&A session on Friday. Saturday, of course, is the 2-hour weekend where we test things and we answer your questions. Sunday, of course, is introspection. So that's what we have coming up in the next week. And right now, we're going to get ready to jump right into the second hour.